The next topic that we want to talk about is setting up something called parental controls. Now, if you don't have a home version of Windows, if you're using a business version, parental controls isn't included because obviously when you're at work, you're not supposed to be worrying about controlling your children. But I'm using the Ultimate version or the Home Premium, or any of those home versions will have it. Let's go ahead and click on this. We need to go ahead and choose a specific user for whom we want to set up the parental controls. It's also warning me at the top of the screen that the administrator account doesn't have a password. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my son is pretty smart, and even when he was 8 or 9 years old, if I didn't have an administrator password on my account, he knows how to go in, change the user, and go in and change his settings. So remember, the key to all of this being effective is to password protect your account. I'm not going to do that for this particular course at this moment. What I need to do, though, is I need to choose the account for which I want to set up the parental controls, and that would be my new student account. Once again, it's saying, okay, but you don't have a password. Would you like to ensure the passwords are on? And I'm going to say, thank you for reminding me, but for now, no, I don't. Parental controls are either on or off. And then once they're on, you can set up controls for things like time limits, the games that are available, and you can even block specific programs from being used. So first of all, we need to go up and say, I want to turn on parental controls. Then we can go through each one of these options. I'll start with time limits. My son is one of those people who, if you gave him a choice, he would be on his computer 29 hours a day. And yes, I do realize there's only 24 hours in a day, but that's exactly my point. So instead of having to always be kind of the nagging parent, how long have you been on, should you be on, those kinds of things, it was much easier to set up parental controls. Now, that's not because I want to be a passive parent, it just takes away one source of argument. The time limits actually block times when the computer is either available or they will be logged out. For my son, he should not be logged on before a certain time in the morning, or in the afternoon during weekdays, or during a certain time after school. He shouldn't be logged on either because he's either supposed to be studying or doing chores. So it was much easier to use this feature. I'm not going to go through setting up an entire schedule with you, but let's take a look at what some of the things are that are available and how we set those. Let's say that for Mondays, my son should not be on the computer before 8 a.m. I can simply click on Monday, starting at midnight, and drag over to highlight all of the squares up through 8 o'clock. When I do so, you need to make sure that you are looking at what you're doing. This is actually blocking the time. The squares that are colored in are the times they are not allowed on the computer. So of course I could do that for every weekday. I am just simply holding down my mouse button, clicking and dragging so that I can block these out at any time. Now when he comes home from school in the afternoon, he's also not supposed to be on the computer. So what do I have to do for this? Well, I'm going to give him maybe an hour in the morning that he could be on the computer. And then he's supposed to be at school, but you know what? If he's not here, it's not an issue. So I'm not going to block all of that out. What I might want to do is say that he's blocked out between 2 and 4. Maybe those are the hours when he's supposed to be either studying or doing homework. You get the idea. This will be specific, of course, for your individual child or children. And remember, if each one of them has an account, then you can set it up differently. So if you have an older teenager, they may be allowed to be on until maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night, whereas a younger child may be blocked after 8. This also prevents them from getting up in the middle of the night and using the computer. Not that I have any experience with that either. So you get the idea here. This is actually very simple. It does not include total hours on the computer. In other words, it doesn't have a system that says they can be on during certain periods of time, but not more than an hour a day. That's something that will have to be done by you monitoring them. When you're finished, we'll say OK. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want to tell you that most games that are put out these days have ratings, kind of like movies can be G, PG, PG-13. The game setting allows you to set a level above which this particular user cannot use the game. So if an 8-year-old wants to log on and play a game that has a mature rating, that game will be blocked. You also can block games that don't have a rating or unrated games, which is nice. And then specific programs, a good example of that would be on my home computer if I have Quicken for my personal finances. Well, that's something that my children should not be using, so I can block that particular program and it's not allowed to run for them. This really is a really nice feature that comes built in with the later Windows operating systems. When I'm all finished, I simply click OK. It's going to bring me back to the screen where I can choose another user, so I could set up the parental controls for another user that I have. In my case, this is all that I have, so I'm pretty much finished. At this point, I'm going to go back and I'm simply going to close this box. I now have different accounts, and to show that to you, I'm going to go to my Start button, and instead of shutting down, I'm going to pause over the arrow, and I'm going to show you that I can actually switch users. Now, this is not the same as logging off. If I log off completely, that logs me off as administrator and brings up the screen saying, who do you want to log on as? When I switch users, it keeps me logged on, but allows me to also log on as somebody else. And I wanted to show you that feature. As you can see on my screen, I now see the account for administrator, and it does tell me that the administrator is currently logged on. And there's also my student account. If I click on the penguins, here is my logon. It already has my username based on the profile I selected. Now I'm going to type in the password. And just for our purposes, I'm going to type the wrong password. I'm going to type banana. And then I'm going to press enter. It tells me that the username or password is incorrect. Okay, well, let me click OK then. And because I typed it in incorrectly, now it shows me my password hint, my favorite food. Oh, that's right. Let me go ahead and type apple. Just as another note, you'll also see a link that says reset password. If we would have created a password reset disk, because I can't remember what my password is, that's when that particular feature would be used. We didn't do that. In this case, I've typed in the word, I hope. I'm going to press enter. It will take a few seconds for it to log on because this is the first time I've logged on. Because I'm a new user, I get my own desktop. I get my own folders for documents, pictures, and so forth. And that's what it's going through right now. This only happens the first time a new account logs on. And there's my brand new desktop. If I now move down to my Start button and give it a click, we can see that it shows my picture and that I am logged on as the student and not as the administrator on the Start menu. You'll also notice that the Start menu options on the left-hand side are reset to the defaults. None of the programs that I've used throughout this course are showing up because this is a new profile for a new user, so everything's reset to the default. Now, just to get us back to a good place, I'm going to go back over to Shutdown, and I'm going to actually log off as student. And anytime you log off, it brings you back to a logon screen. Now, for Windows XP users, you won't see a screen like this. You'll actually see a box right in the middle of the screen that says something like press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to log on. Then once you do that, it will bring up a box where you have to type in your username and password. This is the screen that you'll see if you're using Windows Vista or Windows 7. I can see that student is no longer logged on. It just says student, but it shows me that the administrator is still logged on this computer. Now you can see how adding user accounts adds security as well as customization for different people using the same computer system. And it really is kind of a different version, if you will, of what happens on a domain with a server in a larger business environment.